There is a moment in every person's life when the rules of the world dissolve and a new truth rises from within. A truth that tells you nothing is impossible, nothing is too big, nothing is too far from reach. Today, I stand before you not as someone who waited for life to change, but as someone who claimed change from within and watched the universe rearrange itself around that decision. This isn't a story of luck, chance, or miracles falling from the sky. This is the story of stepping into the power of imagination, aligning with the identity of wealth, and witnessing the world echo that identity with breathtaking accuracy. When I tell you I manifested 140 million in just 7 days, I'm not sharing an achievement. I'm sharing a revelation. The moment you decide who you are in consciousness, the physical world bows to that decision. Everything begins within, and everything you see outside of you is nothing but the shadow of your inner assumption. And today I'm here to show you how stepping into the end, feeling it as real, and living from the fulfilled vision can transform your life faster than you ever believed possible. Let this moment be the one where your old limitations fall away and you awaken to the infinite power that has always lived inside you. Imaginatuaila's reality imagination is not a fantasy, not a daydream, not a mental amusement. It is the creative power that shapes the entire structure of your life, the force that molds circumstances, opportunities, events, and outcomes into physical reality, and the only true cause behind everything you experience in the outer world. To understand how I manifested 140 million in 7 days, you must first understand this foundational truth. Imagination is the source of all creation. Every building you walk into, every song you hear, every invention you use, every fortune ever accumulated, each one began as a picture in someone's mind before it appeared in physical form. What you vividly imagine, and more importantly, what you feel to be true within your imagination, must externalize itself in your world. The outer world is nothing but crystallized imagination, a mirror reflecting the inner movie you play repeatedly. This is why changing your imagination is the fastest way to change your life. When I stepped into the vision of having 140 million, I was not hoping, wishing, begging, or asking. I was creating. I was sculpting reality from its root, altering the cause rather than trying to fix effects. Most people make the mistake of believing the physical world is the source, but the truth is the physical world is only the end product. The beginning exists inside you. Every condition you experience, good or bad, is the harvest of past imaginal acts. You are always imagining, whether consciously or unconsciously, and the moment you become deliberate, intentional, and disciplined with your imagination, you become the master of your destiny instead of the victim of circumstances. When I imagined possessing 140 million, I wasn't visualizing lightly. I was stepping into the experience, feeling the weight of it, walking in the identity of someone who already had it, and letting the feeling saturate every part of my consciousness. This internal embodiment rewrote the blueprint of my life. The universe does not respond to words, it responds to states of being. When you assume the state of wealth, abundance, success, or love in your imagination, the unseen forces of reality begin to rearrange themselves to match the state you occupy. Imagination plants the seed, and life reflects the seed back as a harvest. But the world will not change until the inner state changes first. That is the law. Imagination must come before manifestation. Inner acceptance must come before outer confirmation. And the feeling of the wish fulfilled must come before the physical result. When I imagined my bank accounts filled, I didn't try to figure out how the money would come. The how belongs to the universe. My only job was to dwell in the end, feel it naturally, and refuse to return to the old state of lack. Imagination is not a fantasy. It's the blueprint of your world. Each time you imagine something intensely and accept it as true, you impress it upon the subconscious, and the subconscious then commands the outer world to reorganize itself. This is why imagination is far more powerful than effort, struggle, or force. Reality doesn't change through stress, it changes through inner alignment. If you imagine yourself rich, but feel poor, life will echo your feelings, not your words. If you imagine yourself successful, but feel unworthy, life will reflect unworthiness, not success. Feeling is the secret because feeling is what seals the imaginal act into the subconscious. The moment you feel the wish fulfilled as real, creation is complete. What follows in the physical world is simply the unfolding of what you have already accepted in the unseen. When I imagined 140 million, I didn't do it to escape reality. I did it to create a new reality. I allowed the vision to become more real than the present moment. I lived mentally in the future I wanted, not the present I could see. This is the key to profound transformation. You must become loyal to your imagination, not to your senses. The senses will always reflect the past. Imagination reveals the future. The senses show only what has already been created. Imagination shows what is possible. And when your inner conviction becomes stronger than the evidence of the external world, life has no choice but to shift. Imagination is the paintbrush, consciousness is the canvas, and your life is the finished painting. If you do not like the picture you see, you must repaint it in your mind. That is where true power lies. Everything begins within you, and everything ends as the world reflecting what you chose to imagine. This is how a 7-day manifestation became not only possible, but inevitable, because I had already created it inside before it ever appeared outside. Living from THEND, living from the end, is the greatest secret behind rapid manifestation, the quiet force that turns desires into inevitabilities, and the state of consciousness that transforms dreams into physical form with astonishing speed. And if there is one principle that made the manifestation of 140 million in 7 days possible, it is this one truth. You must think from the reality you desire, not of it. Thinking of a desire keeps it distant, keeps you hoping, keeps you wishing. But thinking from the desire places you in the experience as if it is already accomplished. When I decided to manifest 140 million, I didn't picture myself wanting it. I pictured myself already living in the version of me who had it. I mentally stepped into the identity, the naturalness, the ease, and the emotional atmosphere of someone for whom financial abundance was not a miracle, but a norm. Living from the end is not pretending, it is assuming the state of the fulfilled version of yourself and letting that assumption guide your emotions, thoughts, reactions, and expectations. It is a shift so subtle yet so powerful that once you step into the end in imagination, the physical world begins to rearrange itself in ways you cannot predict. Most people live from their current circumstances, reacting to what they see, letting the outer world dictate the inner state. But the moment you reverse this, allowing the inner world to shape the outer, you begin to operate from true power. When you live from the end, you stop checking for results because the result already feels done inside. You stop worrying about timing because in consciousness the event has already occurred. You stop doubting because the version of you in the end state cannot doubt what it already possesses. When I imagined having 140 million, I did not walk through life waiting for it to come. I walked through life as someone who already had it. I didn't ask, when will it show up? Instead, I lived with the calm certainty of knowing it was already mine. My inner world had shifted, and the outer world simply needed a few days to catch up. Living from the end means your reactions change first. If you still react with fear, lack, or disbelief, you are not in the end state. But when your reactions change, when your automatic emotional responses align with the reality you desire, you have moved into the true identity that creates manifestation. From the end, your decisions evolve. You make choices based on abundance, not limitation. Your conversations shift. You speak with confidence instead of desperation. Your energy elevates. You embody the state of someone who already succeeded. And this embodiment communicates to the universe more powerfully than any words, affirmations, or visualizations on their own. Living from the end means you become the version of yourself who already has what you want before the physical evidence appears. You dress like them, think like them, walk like them, feel like them, breathe like them, and expect like them. Not externally through forced behavior, but internally through identity. This shift is not about acting, it is about becoming. It is not about pretending, it is about accepting the new state as your truth. When this acceptance becomes natural, manifestation becomes automatic. The world around you bends to match the inner state with a precision that feels supernatural. The biggest mistake people make is waiting to feel successful until success arrives, waiting to feel wealthy until money appears, waiting to feel loved until a relationship shows up. But the law is the opposite. You must feel it before it arrives. You must live in the consciousness of fulfillment before the outer world can echo it back. Living from the end is stepping into the wish fulfilled with such conviction that you become emotionally unmoved by what the physical world currently shows. You may still see lack, but you no longer identify with it. You may still see conditions that contradict your desire, but you no longer accept them as final. You may still experience old circumstances, but you know they are only shadows of your past state of mind. When I lived from the end of having 140 million, I carried a calm confidence within me. I made decisions from stability, not scarcity. I allowed intuition to guide me because I already knew I was operating from abundance. I didn't chase opportunities, they shifted toward me. Events lined up with uncanny timing. Conversations led to breakthroughs. The universe began weaving together events that my logical mind could never have orchestrated, because consciousness is the true architect. Once the inner state is occupied, the outer world has no choice but to conform. Living from the end means planting your consciousness at the finish line and letting life rearrange itself to bring you there. It is the art of claiming the desire first internally and allowing reality to crystallize around your assumption. This is why manifestations that seem impossible to others become effortless to those who understand this principle. When you live from the end, time compresses. Delay dissolves, obstacles fade, resistance disappears. Everything aligns with the final result. And because the end is already assumed, the journey becomes a matter of unfolding. This is the power that allowed 140 million to appear in 7 days. Not luck, not chance, but identity. The moment you step into the end, the journey is over. The rest is simply the world reflecting who you have decided to be. THINVCBE every transformation, every breakthrough, every miracle, and every so-called impossible manifestation begins not in the physical world, but in the unseen world of imagination, and understanding this truth is the key to unlocking outcomes that defy logic, time, and probability. Because the invisible scene you hold within your mind is the true cause of everything that appears in your life. The world you see around you is nothing more than the delayed reflection of past assumptions, past emotions, and past imaginal experiences crystallized into form. When I manifested 140 million in 7 days, the manifestation did not begin with a business deal, an opportunity, a conversation, or a stroke of luck. It began in the invisible scene I consistently returned to in the silence of my mind. The invisible scene is the root, and the outer world is only the fruit. Most people try to change the fruit while ignoring the root, fighting circumstances, struggling against conditions, and reacting to what their senses show them. But the truth is that the senses only reveal what has already been created. The cause is always invisible. When you understand this, you stop battling the outer world and begin tending to your inner world, because that is where true creation occurs. The invisible scene is more real than the physical scene, because the invisible creates and the visible obeys. The moment you craft a vivid, emotionally charged inner scene that represents your desired reality, and you allow it to feel natural, normal, and true, you have already set the cause in motion, and the physical world must bend toward it. When I saw myself already in possession of 140 million, I did not merely visualize it as a vague hope. I constructed a clear inner movie. I saw the numbers in my accounts. I felt the emotions of stability, freedom, and fulfillment. I heard the subtle inner conversations that matched someone living in abundance. I created sensory details so real that my subconscious accepted the scene as an accomplished fact. Once the inner scene was accepted, the outer world began to reshuffle itself to reflect that acceptance. This is how life works. Everything in your world is simply responding to the pictures you hold within. People appear, ideas arrive, opportunities unfold, and events synchronize according to the state of consciousness you occupy. The invisible scene is the blueprint. The physical world is the construction site. If you want to build a new life, you must create a new blueprint first. But here's the deeper truth: the invisible scene doesn't just influence the outer world, it commands it. The power of consciousness is superior to any physical limitation, any time constraint, any logical barrier, or any statistical probability. That is why manifestations that seem extraordinary to others become natural for those who understand the power of the unseen. When I allowed the invisible scene of wealth fulfilled to dominate my awareness, I no longer reacted to the old reality. I stopped looking for signs because the sign existed within me. I stopped checking for evidence because the evidence was already accepted internally. I stopped doubting because the inner scene had become more real to me than the outer world. And that is the moment creation becomes complete. The outer world then becomes nothing more than the stage on which the invisible script plays out. The truth is that most people fail not because their desire is too big, but because they trust the physical world more than the unseen world. They believe what they see more than what they imagine. They accept outer limitations and ignore inner power. But the ones who manifest rapidly are the ones who flip this hierarchy. They trust imagination over senses, vision over evidence, and inner conviction over outer appearance. The physical world is slow to change because it is the last step in the creative process. Mind is the first step. Imagination is the first cause. Feeling is the first reality. Once the inner scene is accepted as real, the outer world begins its inevitable transformation. And this transformation often unfolds through what looks like coincidence, luck, timing, or unexpected opportunities. But these are simply the pathways the universe uses to express the decision you made internally. When I held the invisible scene of 140 million with certainty, things began moving with astonishing speed. People reached out, opportunities matured, paths opened, and what once seemed impossible became the natural next event in the sequence of life. The invisible scene pulled it all together like a magnet, attracting matching circumstances. This is why you must guard your inner world more carefully than anything else. Your inner scenes must be chosen intentionally, lovingly, and consciously. If you imagine fear, you plant fear. If you imagine failure, you plant failure. If you imagine abundance, you plant abundance. Your imagination is always creating, whether you use it deliberately or not. The moment you deliberately choose the inner scene that reflects your desired outcome and return to it with persistence and feeling, you activate the most powerful creative force in existence. And once the invisible scene becomes natural, the physical world must conform. It has no choice. This is the law. Everything begins from within, and everything you see is simply the world showing you the state you have chosen. When you understand this, you no longer chase manifestations. You create them in the unseen and allow them to unfold naturally in the seen. This is how 140 million appeared in 7 days. It was created inside first, and the world simply followed. Persistency, persistence in the assumed state is the turning point where desires stop being possibilities and become certainties, the invisible force that pushes reality into alignment, and the inner discipline that separates fleeting wishes from unstoppable manifestations, because it is not the initial vision, not the first moment of belief, but the steady, unwavering commitment to the inner reality that compels the physical world to obey. When I manifested 140 million in 7 days, it did not happen because I imagined it once and hoped for the best. It happened because I refused to mentally return to any state that contradicted my desire. Persistence is the art of staying loyal to your inner world, even when the outer world shows no evidence, even when circumstances seem unchanged, even when logic tries to argue, and even when doubt tries to whisper. It is the unwavering dedication to the version of yourself who already has what you desire. This loyalty to the unseen is what bends reality in your favor. Most people imagine what they want, but then immediately fall back into the old state of fear, lack, or impatience. They plant the seed, then dig it up by checking for results, doubting its progress, and reacting emotionally to the physical world. But persistence means you choose to remain in the state of the wish, fulfilled no matter what the senses show. It means you sustain the inner feeling until it becomes natural, normal, and automatic. When I stepped into the state of having 140 million, the outer world did not shift instantly. But instead of being discouraged, I deepened the assumption. I revisited my inner scene. I stabilized my feelings. I anchored myself in the identity of wealth. I ignored the old reality because I knew it was only the shadow of a previous state. Persistence dissolves the old and establishes the new. And this is what most people do not understand. The physical world lags behind the inner world. What you see today is only the echo of who you used to be. But persistence ensures that the echo fades and a new reality emerges. Each time I returned to the state of wealth fulfilled, I was strengthening the new blueprint of my life. Each time I refused to react to the old world, I starved the old pattern. Each time I chose the inner truth over the outer appearance, I accelerated the shift. Persistence is not effort. It is not stress. It is not mental force. It is simply remaining faithful to the inner knowing. It is choosing the new identity again and again until it becomes the only natural way of being. The assumed state becomes your home. Your subconscious adopts it. Your nervous system aligns with it. And once the state stabilizes within, the world must reflect it without. Persistence is powerful because it overrides old programming, dissolves limiting beliefs, and replaces outdated emotional patterns with the feelings of the fulfilled desire. When challenges appeared during my 7-day manifestation, I did not interpret them as signs of failure. I interpreted them as signs of transition. When delays surfaced, I treated them as echoes of the old reality fading away. When logic tried to intrude, I silenced it with the feeling of certainty. Persistence means you refuse to negotiate with doubt. You refuse to give power to circumstances. You refuse to let temporary appearance dictate your identity. You choose the end, and you return to it until the world must comply. And it always does. Every time you return to the assumed state, you reinforce the new reality. Every time you choose the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you instruct the subconscious to accept it. Every time you react as the version of you who already has your desire, you synchronize yourself with the outcome. Persistence is like holding a radio dial on the frequency of the life you desire. You don't switch stations because of static. You hold the frequency until the signal becomes clear. Most people give up too early, not because the desire is impossible, but because they abandon the state before it has time to manifest. They allow the outer world to convince them that their inner work is ineffective. They break the alignment and then wonder why nothing changes. But the ones who persist, the ones who hold the assumption with consistency, experience manifestations that arrive with a speed and precision that shocks the mind. When I persisted in the state of possessing 140 million, a remarkable calmness took over. I no longer questioned if, I no longer wondered when, I no longer debated how. I simply knew. The assumption became solid, stable, immovable. And as soon as it felt natural within, the external world began rearranging with effortless flow. Opportunities accelerated, Paths opened, numbers aligned, and in 7 days the physical confirmation arrived. Not because of effort, but because of persistence. Persistence is the bridge between imagination and reality. It is the force that holds the end state so firmly that the world cannot help but match it. When you commit to the state of the fulfilled desire with unshakable loyalty, manifestation becomes not a question of possibility, but a matter of certainty. This is the power that turns inner vision into tangible experience. This is the power that brings desires into form. And this is the power that makes the extraordinary unfold with absolute inevitability. The naturalness of the naturalness of the wish fulfilled is the final gateway through which every manifestation must pass. The moment when a desire stops feeling like a distant dream and becomes a normal, effortless extension of your identity. And this naturalness is the true signal that creation is complete within you, and that physical reality is now obligated to express what you have already accepted in consciousness, because nothing in this world can resist the state that feels natural to you. This principle was the cornerstone of manifesting 140 million in just 7 days, not because the amount was small or because circumstances were favorable, but because the moment the idea of having that wealth felt natural, ordinary even, the manifestation became inevitable. Naturalness is the emotional tipping point where the desire shifts from longing to possession, from "I want it" to "this is who I am," from imagining something external to embracing it as internal truth. Most people fail to manifest not because the desire is too large, but because the desire continues to feel foreign, unfamiliar, or out of reach. They imagine wealth while feeling poor. They imagine love while feeling unworthy. They imagine success while feeling incapable. Their inner emotional atmosphere contradicts the vision they hold. But when the wish fulfilled becomes natural within you, when the state feels like home, when your inner reactions align with the fulfillment rather than the lack, the subconscious accepts it effortlessly, and the universe organizes itself with mechanical precision to reflect that new identity. When I imagined possessing 140 million, I knew I had to move beyond excitement, beyond wishing, beyond daydreaming. I had to reach the point where having that money felt normal. Not overwhelming, not astonishing, not unbelievable, simply normal. And that shift did not come from forcing belief. It came from returning again and again to the end scene until it felt comfortable. I replayed the inner scene until the emotional charge faded, and it became familiar. I felt the freedom, the ease, the stability, the calm satisfaction of someone who had already achieved financial mastery. I imagined checking my accounts without shock. I imagined living in abundance without exaggeration. I imagined being wealthy without effort. Eventually, the state stopped feeling like a fantasy and began feeling like my true identity. And that is the moment the manifestation was sealed. The universe mirrors your internal sense of normal, not your sense of hope. If wealth feels natural, wealth appears. If success feels natural, success unfolds. If abundance feels natural, abundance expresses itself. The outer world always follows the path of least psychological resistance. Most people make their desires feel too extraordinary, too distant, too complicated. They place their desires on a pedestal, and in doing so unconsciously reinforce the idea that those desires are separate from them. But the moment you bring the desire down from the pedestal and make it normal, your subconscious merges with it, accepts it, and expresses it. Naturalness is not excitement, it is familiarity. It is the casual knowing that this is already your life. When something feels natural, you stop checking for it. You stop questioning it. You stop doubting it. You stop chasing it. You expect it, and expectation is the soil in which manifestation grows rapidly. When I stepped into the naturalness of having 140 million, I noticed something shift within me. I no longer felt the need to see proof. I didn't look for signs. I didn't question timing. I didn't analyze how it would unfold. I simply lived in the quiet confidence of someone who already had it. My imagination no longer felt like imagination. It felt like memory. This is the moment the subconscious takes over. Once the subconscious adopts the new state, your conscious mind no longer needs to effort, push, or worry. The subconscious is the creative power behind all manifestations, and it expresses whatever feels natural to you with absolute consistency. If poverty feels natural, poverty remains. If wealth feels natural, wealth becomes inevitable. If happiness feels natural, happiness dominates your life. The subconscious always returns you to the emotional baseline you hold. And so the work is not to force the manifestation, but to shift the emotional baseline. Once the naturalness is established, manifestation becomes automatic. Opportunities appear without struggle because they are now part of your identity's expression. People show up who match your energy. Circumstances align in ways that look miraculous to others but feel normal to you. That is the beauty of naturalness. What others perceive as extraordinary feels like the most ordinary expression of your inner state. When the wealth I imagined materialized in the physical world within 7 days, it did not feel shocking. It felt inevitable. That is the power of naturalness. When the manifestation arrives, it feels less like a miracle and more like a confirmation. It feels like the world simply adjusting to who you have already become internally. And that is the great secret. You do not manifest what you want. You manifest what feels natural. Make the desire familiar. Make it comfortable. Make it normal. When the wish fulfilled becomes the atmosphere of your inner world, the outer world cannot help but reflect it with precision, speed, and ease. Naturalness is the final seal of creation, the invisible signature that declares it is done.